Welcome back. Our duty expert on Latin America is on deck. He is Ambassador Roger Noriega. You can find his writings with considerable effect at Inter-American Security Watch. Roger formerly served as an Assistant Secretary of State at the direction of George W. Bush. He was responsible for the Western Hemisphere. He also was the U.S. representative to the Organization of American States, now a visiting fellow with the American Enterprise Institute, and always a welcome guest here. Roger, welcome back. Good to have you.
It's good to be with you.
Well, we're sort of focusing, of course, on the Iran deal at the moment, but I'm wondering what your thoughts are, Roger, as you've been watching very closely another negotiation by the Obama administration, namely that involving the Castro brothers and normalization of relations between the United States and Cuba, whether you see certain parallels between the approach that the Obama administration has taken with these two despotic regimes.
Well, certainly they are both motivated by legacy shopping of the Obama administration, seeing preconceived notions, really misinformation or misapprehension of problems, and seeing the U.S. as an obstacle to progress and getting us out of the way. I mean, when you look at the Iran agreement, it looks like it's what we're containing there is U.S. influence in the Middle East. And getting us out of Iran's way. In the case of Cuba, the objective is let's normalize relations because the United States is the root of all problems in Cuba. And once we run the flag up in Havana, that Cubans can start to put their orderly future in place. So they both see the U.S. as the problem, as the obstacle to progress, and the president is able to trumpet some great success. But the legacy will be one of the U.S. losing credibility and losing ground in two important regions.
Yeah, Roger, talk a little bit about this latest set of revelations about the investigation that prosecutor Alberto Nisman engaged in and what's probably still yet to be discovered there.
Well, this is another example of Iran's treachery and terror, fresh example right here in our own hemisphere. And the New Yorker captured this very well. Did Iran collude with the Argentines to murder a prosecutor to cover up its terrorism in right here in Buenos Aires? This is an extraordinarily interesting case, one that the administration has done everything to cover up because it's a dramatic example of the legacy of terrorism by Iran right here in our neighborhood, and an example of what they're capable of doing. Using Argentina and Venezuela relations to evade sanctions, projecting terrorism in the form of Hezbollah right into the Americas, recruiting people, money laundering, all of these Iran's bloody fingerprints, and a very, very compelling example of what we can expect from Iran.
Yeah, and unfortunately, with the windfall from this deal, there will almost certainly be a lot more of that Iranian malevolence in our hemisphere as well as elsewhere, Roger Noriega. Let me turn to a related point. Speaking of Venezuela, one of the preeminent figures in the United States Congress these days is the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Bob Corker. He made a trip to Venezuela recently at the invitation of its opposition. What came of that trip, Roger, and what do you make of the possibility that this might represent a new opportunity for fresh pressure on the Maduro regime for improvements in any number of respects, notably with respect to the treatment of their own people?
Well, I think the State Department, working with the Maduro regime in Venezuela, was cooking up this Corker visit as an effort to sort of get him on board on this normalization track. The opposition moved in and sort of preempted this, got its side of the story to Senator Corker, and I think to his credit, He left after 3 days in Venezuela with very sober words and admonitions for that regime, and pretty darn skeptical. And about the same time, Senator Corker put out a very sober and skeptical statement about what the United States is doing in Cuba as well. So hopefully that bodes well for his learning curve and his willing to use the Senate then as a lever on the administration's misadventures, standing up to these hostile, dangerous regimes. In the case of Venezuela, a narco state that's supporting terrorism and crushing the opposition. The State Department's touting an electoral path for solving that country's problems, and already they're excluding key candidates. The regime is excluding the key candidates from being able to run in those elections. So we have to keep an eye on the State Department, of course, at all times, because they insist on these accommodations with these hostile regimes.
Yeah. This seems to me to be a moment when some congressional leadership is certainly required. I hope Senator Corker will be providing it. Roger, let me turn to another nation in your portfolio, a little closer to home. Mexico, of course, had the horrific, scandalous breakout of one of the most wanted and dangerous drug kingpins of all time, Joaquin Chapo Guzman, from a maximum security prison where he was awaiting trial in Mexico, having had the Mexican judiciary insist that that had to happen before he could be extradited to the United States. How on earth did this happen? As best you can tell, I'm hearing reports today that it may have taken as long as a year for this tunnel to be built by which he escaped, and it seemingly had to have had the connivance of if not the active collaboration of some of the officials in the prison.
Right. Informed observers like you and me saw this tunnel being dug the minute they arrested him. That's why we were all calling for his extradition to the United States. And I think the fallout will be very serious for Enrique Peña Nieto, the president of Mexico, who's had pretty mixed results in recent elections. Already people are looking over the horizon, getting beyond him. It's a very bad sign for Mexico. There's this continued corruption, even within the ruling party, weak opposition, so it's very troubling. The fallout here in Washington is important too, Frank, because the Senate will be considering the nomination of Roberta Jacobson to be ambassador to Mexico. And why on earth didn't we request Guzman's extradition? I heard that she was queried about this in private meeting, and she had no idea whether we would even requested extradition. I know that the Mexicans objected to this a priori, but that's their problem. Our responsibility, her responsibility as a U.S. official, is to insist that we ask for that extradition and battle this in the Mexican courts.
Well, and she, of course, was a successor in the job that you held, Roger Noriega, at the State Department, the Assistant Secretary for Western Hemisphere Affairs. I can't think of anything in her conduct during her time in that position that would suit her or certainly deserve the kind of enhancement of her stature of the designation and role and rank of ambassador. But that will be for another day. I suspect we have to let go of that. Roger Noriega, we thank you for your service, both as an ambassador of this country and as an Assistant Secretary of State, and for the work you're doing now with Inter-American Security Watch and, of course, at the American Enterprise Institute. Thanks for joining us. Come back to us again very soon. I hope the rest of you will come back to us again tomorrow. Same time, same station. Until then, this is Frank Gaffney. Thanks for listening.